11 of cleaning season. It's crazy that we went on this long journey, but this week we're learning about what it means to live on purpose. And earlier this week on Monday, I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, right? And I didn't really have any answers or anything, but God, he came through. And what happened was, it started raining outside and I was ready to get in my car. And he placed in my heart about purpose. And I was like thinking about it, like, what does this really mean still? And then when I got home, I was on my phone on YouTube, and what popped up on my screen? Exactly, purpose. And it was Priscilla Shire, and she was talking about purpose in her video. I didn't watch all of it because it was like early in the morning. I was still kind of tired, but still I knew that God was there for me because he had me dig deeper than the surface, right? And he had me dig to the root of what was actually prying my heart. And I had to sit there and think, do I live on purpose? Do I live in excellence? Then later that day, I saw a message from Transformation Church. Pastor Charles Metcalf, one of their executive pastors, was talking about purpose. And one of the terms that he used is deferred responsibility. And what deferred responsibility is the act of placing ownership of one's attitude, circumstance, or life on another person or party. All right, y'all, it's time for a hot moment. Humble, open, and transparent. What I discovered is that I know my purpose, but I defer responsibility. Yes, the world has their own opinions of what I should do, but a lot of me staying stagnant is my own doing. When it comes to proposing, starting something on my own, I defer. It's much easier for me to blame someone else for my issues than it is for me to embrace what God has for my life. Even doing these videos, I'm living my purpose, but I haven't gotten to the root until now. If I'm supposed to live in my purpose and on purpose, I have to take ownerships of both the ups and the downs. There's a story in the Bible from the book of Hosea. He is a prophet in the Old Testament, and in this story it's remarkable because God is using Hosea to do something incredible, like that a lot of us probably would not want to do. In his town, there was this prostitute by the name of Gomer. And yes, there was a lot of other prostitutes, but God chose this one to reach. And what Hosea did, what God wanted him to do, was go to marry this prostitute. And through Gomer, she birthed these children. And each birth was a prophecy of what God was going to do for the children of Israel. And a lot of times, we can be those Gomers. And when we allow the world to preach what they want us to do, like what they want our purpose to be, like they want us to be cookie cutter, 9 to 5, whatever it is in your life, like whatever the world is preaching to us. And a lot of times, without knowing it, we'll go back to that same corner that Gomer was in. Like Gomer, God is trying to give us this purpose, trying to tell us like, hey, you can do this. He's trying to give us these callings in our lives. But a lot of times we'll go back to that same corner and we'll allow the world to sell us short. Because we can't get satisfaction from the world. And a lot of times we will want that money, we will want something that's quick. And that takes us away from the purpose that God has given to us. So we shouldn't be so caught up in wanting approval from others that we shut out God. Even though God called Gomer redeemed, she didn't have a redeemed mindset. And that's why she will always go back to being a prostitute. She didn't live out her purpose freely. She was still enslaved to the past that she once dealt with. And a lot of us, including myself, can probably witness to that. And for me, like a lot of times I'm always like, oh, this is the past me and this is the future me. And I have to remind myself of the purpose that God has for me right now, today. And when I was younger in church, it was this dance team. And I was like, oh man, like I was riled up for it. I was ready to do it. But when it came for practices and to perform, I didn't want to step up into those shoes. And it went on to high school, being in band. I wanted to be a leader, but I didn't want to be the main leader. And if somebody was by me that knew everything to do, I wanted to like kind of scoot over and allow them to take that room, even though I knew I could be a leader of in my own right. I say all this to say, do not defer your responsibility. If God gives you a purpose and a responsibility, do not revert back and do not pass that on to somebody else. God has already done the work of redeeming us and giving us a plan. All we have to do is walk it out. So do not revert back to selling yourself short to the world. So leaders, look at those you serve as vessels you can pour into, rather than vases you can just move around. Both can move, but the intention behind them is drastically different. It's easy to move an empty vase than it is to pour into a vessel that contains life and purpose. Remember, people are not furniture. Do not move them around like decor, ready to show them off to the world, as if they're permanent fixtures in the foundations that you built. And that goes for parents as well. The wisdom you give your children is great, but take a step back and allow them to be leaders and make some of those decisions for themselves. You'll be surprised of how much they learn when they start to act out the lessons you preach to them. As a leader, it's your job and purpose to send out those you taught. We quote Jesus all the time, but forget that he too recruited, taught, and sent out his disciples. And what he did, he took them where they started and he showed them where they could potentially go. The disciples are not simply volunteers. They were on Jesus' team and they were actively doing the ministry alongside Jesus. Then when Jesus ascended, they continued the apostolic ministry with the Holy Spirit within them, guiding them along the way. Jesus came and he fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, but he also helped these men and women discover their true purpose for life. To sum it all up, we have to accept the purpose and plan that God has for our lives, and we should not defer the responsibility and pass it on to somebody else. And with that being said, the second and one of the most important points is that we have to pour out to those around us. So if we don't know our purpose, we can't help somebody else discover their own. Alright guys, thank you for tuning in to this week. And like always, I love you guys, and I'll see you next Friday at what time? That's right, 7 o'clock.